2020.
Ngokwesikhathi ke ngicabanga ukuthi uma siqala ke kwakuyihola lesikhombisana uma ukuthi ke ntambama uma sesiqeda ke kwakunguye u1930 ngalelo langa lelo engangikhulumisana naye noma ngixoxa naye umsolo wokuqala.
You say, Brigadier, you don't think this was an interview. But if it was not an interview, why then did you have to explain his rights to legal representation? All those rights that you referred to, that you allegedly explained, why did you have to ascertain that he was insane and sober senses? Why did you have to ascertain that he was in a right state of mind? If this was just a mere investigation.
So my lord, there was a discussion. All I was responding to is that we did not, myself and Advocate Mnisi, agreed that this term of interview is what led me there. It was an investigation, but I want just to take it further to clarify that point as well, my lord.
Engishoyo ukuthi bangakhona phakathi kwami nayo Advocate Mnisi ukuthi engangikwenza naye umsolo ngalelo langa kwakuyinhlolo khona kodwa ngifuna ukuthi ngiqhubeke nakho.
Now, my lord, and I want to make a situation that is almost similar to this to explain the issue of the rights. If I'm working as a police officer on the street, and this is by example, then you get told, here's a person, you see a person running and somebody says, this person just robbed a bank or just shot someone. You will then apprehend that person and immediately place that person under arrest. At that moment, you will give the person the rights in terms of the Constitution. At that moment, you don't have to wait for the reason to say, before I interview this person, to say, who's your accomplice, who was with you, and so forth. The moment you place that person under arrest, and I'm making a situation where rights are given, at that point, you are expected to give the said person the rights. Subsequent to that, things can develop. For example, who was with you? If there was an accomplice, then you can follow those leads before the formalities. So you don't give rights because you already have ideas of how things are. I knew accused number one, my lord, was arrested for the case of drug dealing. I felt that it was important that I give him his rights on my side so that he understands his rights. That was the first part. The second part was to ascertain his responses as I was moving to this particular case that was in question. Not on the, because I did not know, my lord, so I couldn't say I was giving these rights anticipating that he's going to now talk and there will be a formal interview. I didn't know what he was going to say to me. I didn't know whether I will say, let's talk, I'm implicating myself. I didn't know. It was a prerequisite that I needed to do before we take the discussion further.
Ngifuna ke ukuphendula lokhu ngokwenza isibonelo asithi ke uyayihambela uyiphoyisa ubese uyatshelwa ukuthi nangu umuntu ebaleka lo muntu ke uqeda ukurobha ibhange ozokwenza ke ukuthi lo muntu loyo uma ummisa usizombopha ke emuva kwalokho ila khona ke usuzomchazela ke noma umtshela ngawo amalungelo akhe awumtsheli umuntu amalungelo ngoba ukuthi kukhona ke noma khona kufanele ukwazi noma kufanele mhlambe umtshela ngoba usuzuthi uzoba nenhlolo khona naye ngoba kufanele uma ngabe umbopha amalungelo akhe awazi noma umtshele wona nalana ke okwenzeka kuyena ke umangalo lokuqala ukuthi ngangazi ukuthi uboshelwe icala lezidakamizwa ngabe sengimtshela amalungelo akho uqinisekisa ukuthi uyawazi nokuthi futhi ke bese ngikhulumisana naye ke nokuthi uyakulandela lokhu engimtshela kona kwamalungelo nokuthi futhi ke mase ngiqala sengikhuluma naye ke hayi ngokuthi kufanele ngimnika amalungelo ngoba sengazi noma kukhona engicabangayo ukuthi ngilindele ukuthi angitshele lokhu noma sizoba nenhlolo khona mina naye.
And lastly, my lord, I already knew that he was a person of interest, and that was in the background of my mind because we already had a statement that says he may have been involved in the killing of the deceased in this matter. So that was in the back of my mind. So it was prudent and important that he is aware of his constitutional right, in addition to what I was told by Sergeant Mohola that he seemed to be making some form of admission. So I can't ignore those rights, but I didn't know what the response will be. So I couldn't anticipate that this will lead to an interview.
Okunye futhi ke ngase ngazi ke ngoba ke sasikhona istatement esasikhona ke esasithi ke wayengambandakanyeka ke ekubulaweni kwakhe umufi kulona leli icala nangaphandle kwalokho ke lokho engangisengitshelwe uyena uSergeant Mkhula ukuthi ke kukhona ke akushoyo noma ke akuvumayo yena umsolwa kodwa mina ke ngokuya kuyena ngiyokhulumisana naye ngangazi ukuthi yini azoyisho noma ngangeke ngicabangele ukuthi uzophendula ngale ndlela.
That's my response, my lord.
Iyona leyo impendulo yami.
Don't worry, I'm still trying to digest your response, and that might take almost 2 minutes. When I'm quiet like this, I'm still trying to digest your response.
I understand, my lord.
Yeah, it might take 2 minutes. Brigadier, you saying you already know from Sergeant Mkhula that the person was making admissions. So when you went there to talk to him, you had that at your background. That process of you trying to confirm what you got from advocate, from Sergeant Mkhula, what did you call that process?
No, it's investigation, my lord. Remember, my lord, I said, first, I'm giving a report by Sergeant Mkhula that says this person is making some form of admissions. I don't get the details. I was not given details to Sergeant Mkhula. And I didn't want to pry also myself to say, what did he tell you? Because I took into account her rank, that it will be inadmissible. So I was not given the details as to what form of admissions or sort of admissions is this individual saying, except to say, because you guys are saying are going to force us on investigation with the same accused, please let us meet at Phosphorus police station so that I can, as part of the investigation, engage this individual, this suspect. And that is why now I started with the issues of the rights. In that process, my lord, trying to establish that he understands his rights, that he was in his sober and clear senses. Then when I was satisfied, then I placed the question that I have a reason to believe that he was involved in this matter. So that is how it unfolded. I could not have anticipated that this discussion will lead to a formal interview officer. I don't know, I didn't know what he was going to say, my lord, after giving him the rights. But I can concede and agree that there was an engagement with him.
Lana ke ungakubiza noma ngakusho ukuthi kwakuyingxenye yophenyo noma kwakuwuphenyo ngoba ke ngitshelwa lokhu engikutshelwayo uyena uSergeant Mkhula nami ke angibuzanga noma nginikanga imininingwane yokuthi yini lena amtshela yona ngoba ke lokho kwakuzoba yinto ke eyayingeke ke yamukeleke asithi ke mhlambi phambi kwenkantolo ngoba ke uma ubheka isikhundla sakhe ingakho ke ngoba babethi beya eFosloras ngenxa ukuthi kuyingxenye yophenyo ngathi ngicela sihlangane epolice station yaseFosloras ingakho ke ngaqala ngokuthi ngimchazela amalungelo akhe ukuqinisekisa ukuthi uyawezwa nokuqinisekisa ukuthi ke ngokomcabango noma ngokomqondo ke akukho okumphazamisayo ke emuva kwalokho ke ila kwalandela khona ke umbuzo la esengimtshela khona ke ukuthi ke nginezathu sokukholelwa ukuthi ke uyambandakanyeka ngangingazi ukuthi impendulo zizothini ke ngangeke ngicabangele ukuthi uzophendula kanjani noma leyo kuzogcina sekuyinhlolo khona.
Brigadier, you're telling this court that you already know her information that this was a person of suspect. Now, with that in mind, you go and talk to him. That forms part of the broader investigation, of course. But you speaking to him, what did you call that?
Well, my lord, if counsel wants to call it interview, what I'm saying, my lord, is that because I understood, and I'm trying to move from the direction of what counsel is saying, I understand him to be referring to an interview in terms of formalities. But I
Sorry, is it the question of a language?
Yes.
It could be a discussion.
Yes.
It could be a consultation.
Indeed, my lord.
It could be an interview.
Yes.
It could be a talk.
Indeed, my lord.
But you don't want to use the word interview.
Interview, yes. That's the,
Okay,
that's
fine.
the
Let's
word
get
I'm
on.
shying away from, my lord.
Thank you, Brigadier. There was a piece of a document yesterday that you handed in, which is your diary, and then you said that's where you inscribed everything, most of the things, or a summary of the things that happened. So do you still have that diary of yours?
Yeah, I do, my lord.
Yes.
but I
No, wait. I'm talking about the diary, Brigadier Gininda. Let's get to the diary. Open the date of the 30th of May, Saturday, 2020, 30 May, Saturday, Saturday 2020. And don't talk up until we have opened that. I'll guide you what to do when I just open that date.
All right, I'm on the 30th May.
Yeah, 30 May. At 13 hours, go there. There are time frames there. Let me just put on my spectacles. Because this handwriting, you know, I think it can only be read by the person who wrote here. At 13 hours. Are you on 13 hours on the diary?
Yes, I'm here, my lord.
Read what is written there.
It said I went to interview the suspect at Phosphorus around 1900 hours.
Thank you. And that comes from you, not so.
No, but which part now? What is written here? Because
Who wrote here, Brigadier?
but it is me. But
Thank you. And
No, my lord. I
if
must
it
be
is
given a
you,
chance.
no, Brigadier, don't argue with me. If it is you who wrote this, who then does this come from?
Yeah, but you're misreading the diary, and that's what I want to correct, counsel, my lord. That is misreading the time frames. Because if you follow the sequence of the time, you will not be confused by the 1300 hours that is referring to. And that is why I wanted to explain.
No,
this from the
Brigadier,
beginning.
I said read what is in 1300. I'm not concerned about what could have happened at 1300. I say read what is next to what is written 1300. And you have just read, it says, I went to interview the suspect at Phosphorus around 1930. I'm not concerned about the time. I'm concerned about the word that you yourself used. There's an objection. Let me respect the objection.
As a court, please, my lord, with the greatest of respect, I think, as Brigadier Gininda pointed out, that counsel is, as the witness put it, misreading the diary. He's trying to link the times on the diary to the entries. But the Brigadier says, I just made entries in the diary regardless of the time. So the times must be disregarded. Only the entries are important, the sequence of the entries. That's what the witness is saying. But counsel is trying to push the witness into a corner to say, but you made an entry at 1300 hours. It was just an entry and not linked to the time as such.
No, my lord. With due respect to my colleague, with due respect, I've just said to the witness here, I'm not concerned about time. I don't care what would have happened at 1300. This was just to give, when I said 1300, it was just to give him a clue at what line must he read at. I don't care whether at 1300 somebody was hospitalized or a car broke down or what. No, that's not there. I'm concerned about what was inscribed next to that time, 1300. And I'm not concerned, even if it was at 17 hours, if it was 27 hours or whatever time. I'm concerned about that, what is inscribed there, not the time itself. And we can't argue, Brigadier. We can't argue. We can't argue. Unless we are going to make ourselves unprofessional. You're right there.
My lord, I understand.
But I'm still talking, Brigadier. I'm still talking, Brigadier. If you want to talk, I'll give you the rostrum and then I will keep quiet. When you finish, then I will attend to you.
I'm saying, my lord, I understand. In other words, I'm saying I hear Advocate Mnisi, and I think the point I was saying is that we are aligned. I hear what you're saying. So I didn't, that was not meant to be an argument. So I think it was misunderstood then.
What is it that you understand, Brigadier?
What you just said, I must read. And I think you are saying your focal point is that I say I went to interview the suspect at Phosphorus around 1900 hours, and I'm saying I understand.
Ngithi ke ngiyakuzwa kuloko ongikhombisa kona ukuthi lana ngibhale ukuthi ngahamba ngayokwenza ke inhlolo khona naye umsolwa ephosphorus isikhathi ke kwaku7 ntambama.
So this is what you did with accused number 1. You went to interview him.
I may have used the term interview as it's written here, my lord, but as I said, and the court has explained that it's a question of words, my lord. I do concede that I spoke to him, I engaged with him, and the reason, as I've said, I've shied away from the word interview is because I'm understanding counsel, my lord, and it's really coming from how I'm understanding counsel using the word interview. He uses the word interview as a formal interview in terms of the statement that he referred me to. And that's what creates the problem. But there's no denial that there was a discussion or an engagement between me and accused number 1.
Yebo ke manje kuba inkantolo ishilo ukuthi ke kungaba ukusetshenziswa ke kwamagama nokuthi lana ngibhalile ke lona ke igama leli ilithi interview ukuthi ke insolo khona. Kodwa ke indlela mina engimuzwa ngayo ke advocate uma esebenzisa lona ke lelo gama lelo esebenzisa ke sona ke istatement lesi abesebenzisile ke kodwa ke ngingavuma ngisho ukuthi yebo kwakukhona ke ukukhulumisana noma ukuxoxisana ke phakathi kwami naye umsolo.
And the question was, how long did this interview take place, which you had with accused number 1?
I said, my lord, according to my recollection, by 7:30, we should have been done, my lord. 30 minutes plus minus, as I indicated earlier, my lord.
Noma bese ngishilo ke ngaphambilini ukuthi isikhathi kwangaba ke imizuzu ke ewu30.
So you met him around 7 o'clock in the evening. You had this interview with him for plus minus 30 minutes, and then you were done.
Plus minus, my lord, yeah, the discussion or interview as it's written here. But it was not a written down interview, my lord, or formal interview as one would call it. It was a discussion between me and accused number 1.
Yebo ke lokukhulumisana lokhu ngasho ukuthi kwathatha ke imizuzu ewu30 phakathi kwami naye ke umsola yebo kubhaliwe lana ukuthi inhlolo khona noma interview kodwa ke kwakukhulumisana.
Thank you, Brigadier. Now you have told this court on numerous occasions that you are a protagonist of that principle that you refer to as good, what is it now?
Best practices.
Best practice, yes. You are a protagonist of that good best practice principle, not so?
No, I don't think I said I was a protagonist of a good practice, my lord, rule.
But do you know what a protagonist is?
Yes, I do. But
Okay,
what I've
thank
said,
you.
I don't know it. What I've said is that when it came to the issue of taking a statement, it is always advisable in terms of the best practice rule that someone independent take that statement, because then that person is not involved in the matter, and that's really the issue of objectivity. And I said it was not that it was my concept, or I'm a strong firm believer of it. It's a way of making things objective and fair, as and when the evidence is presented, my lord.
Engikushilo ke izolo ukuthi uma sekufinyelela ke ekuthatheni sona ke istatement noma la umuntu esefuna khona ke ukugonyuluka ukuthi ke okona ke okuyikona kufanele kwenziwe, hayi ukuthi yimina noma indlela engenza ngayo noma kufanele ngenza ngayo, kodwa ke kusebenzeka ngaleyo ndlela ukuthi kube omunye umuntu ongasiyona ingxenye yophenyo okuyena othatha leso statement.
Brigadier, are you aware, a bit of a discourse, are you aware that when you are engaging in an interview with a suspect or a person, you ask him certain questions, he answers those questions, that is basically a taking down of a statement, albeit not be written down?
No, I don't understand. If you are warning, because these are separate processes, what I embarked on, my lord. When you warn a person according to his rights at a particular place, I'm not aware that you must have a form to record what you are telling him. That's why I said this notice of rights, what transpired here, should be viewed in that context, that it was in the course of investigation, I'm meeting the accused for the first time, I give him his right, and then things flow from there. I'm not aware that you can't give this right without actually having a formal form where you must record the answers that he give you. I'm not aware of that, my lord.
Akukho ke mina ngikwaziyo ukuthi ke uma ngabe uhlangana nomuntu noma ke umsola usukhulumisana naye umnikeza futhi amalungelo akhe ke ukuthi lapho kune form thizeni ekufanele ukuthi ube nayo ke ngoba lana ukhuluma uyamtshela ngamalungelo akhe futhi uyamexwayisa phecelezi ke i-warning bese kuthi ke lapho ke kunezinto ke ezivelayo ke noma ezikhulunywayo akukho engikwaziyo ukuthi kufanele ube ne-form thizeni lapho.
No, that's not my question. My question is, are you aware? Do you know? Otherwise, if you don't know, it's something else. But do you know, are you aware that when you are interviewing a person, you ask him questions, he gives you answers. You ask him questions, he gives you answers. That is, in essence, a taking of a statement, even if it's not written down.
No. No, I'm not aware, my lord.
Thank you.
That concept, and I don't
Thank
think
you.
it's accurate,
You
my
said
lord.
you
It's
are not aware.
Yes, but it's not accurate. I'm qualifying it to say it is not accurate that every time you interview or you engage with a person, it must be recorded. And that's why, my lord, I made an example that you interview a person on the street or you engage with a person on the street about something that just transpired. You can't get a form and say, let's sit down, I want to record you the questions and the answers, and the way you obtain the information that you need, and you move on to arrest or follow up the investigation that needs to be done at that stage. It's not a rule that you must always sit down, because sometimes circumstances don't allow that, my lord.
La angivumelani ke nalokho futhi ke izathu noma ke imbangela ukuthi ngisho lokho ke ukuthi ke angazi la ekusho khona ke ukuthi kufanele uma unomuntu ukhulumisana naye kunala ekufanele njalo ngaso sonke isikhathi ubhale phansi ingakho ngiyenze lesiyasibonela ngaphambilini ke ukuthi uhlangana nomuntu emgaqweni ngento eqeda ukwenzeka manje ukhulumisana naye umnikeza amalungelo akhe asikho ke manje isikhathi ukuthi ke manje noma ayikho iform lapho nesikhathi sokuthi ke asibhale phansi lokho engikubuzayo nalokho okuphendulayo ngoba ke lapho ke kufanele uqhubeke nophenyo mhlambe kufanele uqhubeke uyobopha omunye noma abanye.
And I agree with Advocate Mnisi, my lord. If the situation is that I took a conscious decision that there's a suspect at a particular place, and I'm going to obtain a formal warning statement from him, be it is detained or whatever the circumstances in prison in. Yes, in that instance, because from the beginning, I know the person is detained in preparation for court or for certain answers that perhaps the prosecution need, and we've arranged that that person must submit this explanation in the form of a warning statement. In that instance, yes, there will be a form for the warning statements where questions are put, answers are recorded, and such information then will go to the docket and be presented to the prosecutor. That is a different situation when you encounter someone on the street.
Kodwa ke ngizovumelana ke nayo advocate Mnisi ukuthi ke uyehluka ke uma kuukuthi uyazi ukuthi uyake kumsola othize lo msola mhlambi ke usesitokisini futhi ke ngokukhulumisana noma ingxoxo onazo nomshushisi loyo muntu loyo kufanele uye kuyena kunemibuzo kufanele ke umhlome yona bese kuthi impendulo zakhe uyibhala phansi lapho ke yebo ikhona iform ekufanele uhambe nayo uye kuloyo muntu leyo umbuzo lokho akuphendulayo ubhala phansi ubese uyayithatha ke leyo form leyo uyoyifaka ke noma ke uyoyihlanganisa nalo idokodo lokho kuhlukile ke kunokuthi uhlangane nomuntu emgwaqweni.
That's my response, my lord.
Impendulo yami leyo.
So you do not know that when you interview a person or a suspect, you ask him questions, he gives you answers. You ask him questions, he gives you answers. That constitutes a taking down of a statement, although it's not written down. That you do not know.
No, my lord, I do know that, and please, perhaps Advocate Mnisi is misunderstanding me. And I'm saying, in terms of the formalities, when there's a directive to say a formal statement must be taken from that person, we are totally agreed, because the form prescribes questions that you will put to the person, answers that he gives, up to the time where he elects whether he wants to make a statement or not. We are aligned in that part. The only difference is that when you are in the course of investigation, that principle doesn't suffice, my lord, because you give a person his rights in terms of the constitution. Out of that, then certain things arises in terms of his responses. You can't now say, let's park this discussion now. First, let's go to the station or to the office where I'm going to get a form and redo the. You flow with that investigation. That's the only point that I'm making, my lord.
Cabanga ukuthi ke kukhona ke la esivumelana khona siphinde sike sihlukane khona ke naye uadvocate Mnisi. Yebo la khona ke utshelwayo ke khona ukuthi ke kufanele benothize oyokuthola kuleyo muntu loyo kuneform ohamba nayo unemibuzo ombuza yona lokho akuphendula yeko ekubhala phansi. Kodwa lokho kuhlukileke uma ngaba uqhubeka nophenyo noma kuyingxenye yophenyo leyo ukuthi ke umuntu umnikeza amalungelo akheke noma uyamchazela wona ke uqinisekise ukuthi uyawalandela uyawezwa bese kuthi kulokho ke kunezinto thizeni akutshela zona noma ke eyivelayo lapho awuthi ke asime asambe manje police station ngiyothola iform cha uyaqhubeka ke nalokho.
Is there anything further, Brigadier?
No, my lord, that's that aspect, man.
I said that was a bit of a discourse. Indeed, when you go and talk to a suspect or a person of interest, you ask him questions, he gives you answers. You ask him questions, he gives you answers. That is a taking down of a statement, or even if you don't write it down. I think we understand each other from today henceforth that does constitute a statement. Thank you, Brigadier.
But he denies it. He's not agreeing with you. He denies it. Am I correct?
You are correct, my lord.
I'm saying he denies it. And you're saying he agrees with you.
I hear, my lord. I said that was a bit of a discourse.
Yes, okay. Fine.
Thank you.
But just as a matter of interest,
Yes, my lord.
when you take a statement, a warning statement, you keep using the word warning statement.
Yes.
Is it not a prelude to charging somebody with an offense?
It is, my lord.
Anyway, that's how I understand the law.
It is a tribute, my lord, but in addition, the deponent will attach his signature in
Yes.
that form to confirm
Fine.
the correctness of that document, my lord.
Ukhuluma ke nge-warning statement noma ke phecelezi ke istatement la khona umxwayisayo ngaba lokho akusho ukuthi ke sekula khona umuntu athwesa icala yebo kuyiqiniso futhi ke okunye ukuthi umuntu loyo ke uyasayinda ke kuleyo form leyo.
My lord, I think that question should rather be directed to the jurists, who one of them is myself and or the state.
Now I'm directing.
This witness is not a jurist, he's not a legal guru. As
He's
to
a policeman. He's a policeman who takes a statement.
Yes.
I'm directing it to the investigating officer, the policeman who was investigating this case. Okay.
Those are legal things, my lord. As I'm saying, they'll rather be directed to the jurists, who one of them is myself and the second one is the state. This is a witness who's just involved on the investigating side of it. I'm not so sure whether the court would then allow me the opportunity to respond to that question.
You can respond.
Let me respond, my lord. My lord, that form.
Are we arguing about forms now? I stated a principle in law that a warning statement is only taken
Yes.
by a policeman who sometimes incidentally happens to be an investigating officer
Yes.
before he charges the person.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a prelude to being charged. In other words, as I understand the law, you can't take a warning statement and then you run around with a person and you don't eventually charge him.
That does happen, my lord.
Okay, fine.
Yes. It does happen.
You can argue that, but I was putting it to him that does he know that? He says he understands that. Okay?
There's no way, my lord, in which he can't say he understands, because exactly what the court has just done now is to confirm what he did, and which is wrong.
What do you mean it's wrong?
It is wrong. Let me explain how wrong it is.
No, you don't explain to a judge, please. You can argue against the judge.
Thank you, my lord. I will argue at the end of
Yeah, I'm
this trial.
55 years in this profession.
Thank you, my lord. I will argue at the end of this trial.
Jesus.
Thank you. Not actually at the end of this trial. I'll argue when my point, when the time comes from me to make submissions to the court.
Yes.
Thank you. The issue was about you being a protagonist of that principle of good governance. Best practice, yes. Brigadier, according to you, when you dissected that principle, you said it involved the principle of fairness and objectivity, not so?
Correct, my lord.
And you are saying it is not always the case where you meet a person in the street who is a suspect, you interview him, where you will be ready to comply with all the formalities of interviewing with the suspect, because you probably would not have all the amenities or the resources to do that, not so?
I'm not sure if I put it like that, my lord, but it's close to that effect. All that I was saying is that during the course of investigation, because that's the paramount part, when during the course of the investigation you come across a suspect which you warn according to his rights, you'll give to that person, you give that person his rights in terms of Section 35 of the Constitution. I'm saying you do not have a form, and there's no requirements that before you give the right, you must have the form to complete that. Now, based on what will transpire after you gave the right in terms of the Constitution to the suspect, it will then drive that discussion whether the person goes directly to the detention or certain dates are followed. And I'm saying at that stage, the forms for the warning statement are not in hand, my lord. If a suspect, that's why I made an example of a person that is being arrested for just committing a crime, the moment you arrest a person, you have to give that person his constitutional rights. And subsequent to that, question may arise to say, who was your accomplice, who that person you were with that ran away? And a person may respond and say, Sipo, whatever name, and then he stays in Soweto. The police may elect to follow that lead. That is before the formalities, the warning statements, the 14A are actually completed. Subsequent to whatever that they've done, then the person will be detained. Thereafter, my lord, the formalities will kick in now. The detention, 14A, notice of right in terms of the Constitution of the very same right you gave that person on the street. But there was no form on the street. Now in the holding cells, there's a form. Same with the warning statement. The person gave utterances to say the person I was with is this person by name, and you can find him at this address, but there's no warning statement. Now when you prepare the person for court, you will document what the person is saying to you in a warning statement, but the discussion does not start there, my lord. It started when the person was understand, and I was explaining it in that context, my lord.
Mina ke indlela bengichaza ngayo lana ukuthi ke lokhu ukwenzekayo kuba ingxenye yophenyo, ukhulumisana nomuntu, umnikeza amalungelo, umchazela amalungelo akhe, uqiniseke futhi ukuthi ke uyakuzwa ke. Lokho ke la bengithi khona ke lapho amaform awekho ngoba lo muntu uhlangene naye lona ke emgwaqweni. Kodwa ke manje kuloko kukhulumisana ke bese kuba nezinto ke ezithize akutshela zona ke ukuthi cha benginobani, uSipho uhlala eSoweto. Lapho ke manje kuqhubeka uphenyo, amapholisa seyahamba ayakhona lapho. Umuntu ke useya estoksini. Lapho ke manje ila esekungenelela khona ke manje ama forms, ama SAP 14A, i-warning statement kanye nokunye, umnikeza lawo malungelo lawo ebukade usumtshelile ngawo vele uma uhlangana naye emgwaqweni. Kodwa ngisho ukuthi ke ayisiso sonke isikhathi la khona ke ama forms akhona.
Thank you, Brigadier. Now let us look at the circumstances under which you made accused number one. I don't know when could you have been. Actually, let me start here. Approximately at what time Now you said you met accused number 1 around 1900 hours in the afternoon, in the evening. Approximately at what time could Sergeant Mohula have phoned you that, hey, we've got this guy here and he seems to be making some admissions in respect of the Senzo Meyiwa case?
After 1400 hours, my lord,
Thank you.
of the same day.
Kwakusemuva kwehora lesibili-ke uma ngabe uSergeant Mkhula exhumana nami engitshela-ke ukuthi-ke kukhona-ke umsolo lana futhi kukhona akushoyo mayelana necala leli lasenzo.
Now you agree with me that if it's after 1400, you had almost like 3 hours before you met accused number 1, so
Yes, in terms of time, there was approximately plus minus 3 hours between the time I got a call to the time I met him, my lord. That is correct.
Ungasho ukuthi-ke kwakungamahora amathathu-ke kusukela ngesikhathi-ke engathola ucingo nesikhathi-ke engahlangana naye ngaso.
And when you received this information, you already know that I will have to go and have an interview with this person to find out if what Sergeant Mohula is telling me does in fact hold water, not so.
Yes, I did form the opinion that I'll have to go and meet this person and have a discussion with my lord.
Yebo-ke kwaba yinto-ke leyo engitshela yona-ke ukuthi kuzofanele-ke ngiyohlangana-ke nalo muntu ngixoxisane naye.
And this is not the same situation as when you fortuitously meet a suspect that is running away from a house robbery situation. You apprehend them, then you had to talk to them there and start the investigation there and there, not so.
No, yes, perhaps let's agree. Yes, it's not a similar situation in terms of a house robbery and the situation I was faced with. But what was common, I did not know what accused number 1 will say. So you cannot therefore have preparation of things because I do not know when I give him his rights in terms of section 35, what his response will be. But secondly, and of utmost importance, I did not know personally, I have not satisfied myself into his state of mind should he be willing to make such admissions. So I was venturing into, and I didn't know, my lord, what he was going to say. So I didn't go with full information of his state of mind, his condition, his awareness in terms of his constitutional rights, and what he will elect to do when I talk to him.
Yebo-ke awungeke lokho kuqhathaniswe noma kufaniseke nesimo la khona-ke kuboshwa khona umuntu oqeda-ke manje ukuthi-ke agqekezeke umuzi othize, kodwa-ke okusemqoka nokubalulekile lana ukuthi-ke yebo-ke khona lokho engangikutsheliwe kodwa-ke ngangasazi isimo sakhe ukuthi sikanjani-ke ngokwasemqondweni, ngangingazi ukuthi futhi yini azofike angitshele yona uma ngabe ngihlangana naye. Ngalokho-ke ngangeke ngilungiselele ngithi-ke angilungise lokhu nalokhu ngingazi ukuthi sofika sikhulumeni noma athini kumina.
The similarities in the two examples, my lord, the example that I've made is that you only have information that this person has committed a crime, and based on what you have in your forehand, at your first hand, you place the person under arrest. You then give the person his rights in terms of section 35 of the Constitution. What he will say, you don't know. And that's what will drive the discussion when he says, I was with so and so, and that person stays at that address. You can't now say, first I must go to the office and do the formalities or to the charge office. You follow that information. So you will get now to a situation which is unknown. It's the same situation. I knew, I'm being told accused 1 is making some form of admissions, but I did not know what he will say when I talked to him. Only when I gave him his rights in terms of the Constitution did I then start having an indication of where he was going, and subsequent to that, arrangements were made accordingly, my lord.
Lana-ke okufanayo-ke noma-ke okuyinto eyodwa-ke kuyibonelo eyimbili ukuthi-ke yebo-ke nangu umuntu uyatshelwa ngayo ukuthi uqeda ukwenza lokhu, uyambopha-ke umnikeza amalungelo akhe-ke awazi-ke ukuthi yini azoqhubeka kutshela yona, kodwa uma seniqhubeka-ke uyakutshela-ke ukuthi bengikade nginobani futhi ubani uhlala kuleli kheli, awuthi-ke asimi manje ngiyothatha amafomu, uyaqhubeka-ke ngaleyo information leyo akutshela yona-ke. Nalana-ke ngakulolu hlangothi lwakhe-ke umsolo wokuqala ngatshelwa lokhu engakutshelwa ngayo umnikeza amalungelo akhe-ke kulokho ke kwaba khona ke okuthize noma ke akushoyo ke ingakho ke kwasekwenziwa ke amalungiselelo lana enziwa ke kamuva ke ukuthi ke ngithole ke umuntu owayezolekelela.
And lastly, my Lord, what guided me in this thing is really the interest of justice. Should I sit and believe that it was not in the best interest of justice to follow what accused number 1 was telling me when he is fully aware of his constitutional rights? He elects to talk freely and voluntarily without any duress. Is it really going to be in the interest of justice for me to suppress this? I don't think so, my Lord. The interest of justice must be served on both sides.
Ingakho ke kufanele ke ube nesiqiniseko noma ke uqinisekiseke ukuthi ke ubulungiswa buyenziwa ke benziwa inhlangothi zombili ke kodwa ungabheka uhlangothi olodwa ke ukuthi uma ngabe kukhona ke lokhu noma khona kutshela kona ke kodwa uyabona ukuthi cha akusibona ke ubulungiswa lobuza benziwa la awuqhubekeki ke nokuthi ke ukwenze lokho.
That's my response, my Lord.
Iyona ke impendulo yami leyo.
Brigadier, in the 3 hours that you had before you met accused number 1, you had ample opportunity to prepare yourself for the interview, and if the resources that you needed to take with, you had ample opportunity to do that, not so?
No, my Lord, but prepare for what? Because I'm going to an unknown, uncharted waters. I prepare for what? When I do not know what the person will tell me, what do I prepare for, my Lord? Because you make preparation based on the knowledge. You have knowledge. You first have to have a first-hand knowledge, then you make necessary preparations. All I knew, with no details, is that accused 1 is making some form of accusation. I did not even know what is it that he's saying. What do I prepare for, my Lord? The preparation I've made was that to these members, as and when they decide now to move from the Tembisa area to East Rand, because as I said earlier, my Lord, I was told that this is the first charge they've arrested him with. They are conducting investigation, and they mentioned the charge of unlicensed firearm in my recollection. But then they'll be moving to forced arrest. Then I decided that as they move to forced arrest, then they should then engage me, and then we'll meet at the police station. That's what I've arranged. I could not have prepared better without knowing what the accused will tell me, my Lord.
Lapho ke ngangingazi noma uma advocate uthi ke kwakufanele ukuthi ke khona ke ngayilungiselela kona ngangizoyilungiselelani ngoba ke akukho enganginako noma engangikwazi ngaphandle kwalokho engakutshelwa ukuthi khona kuthizeni akushoyo umsolo wakhe futhi bengitshela ke ukuthi ke kwakuyingxenye yophenyo lwabo ukuthi babe sethembisa ke khona ke ngakutshelwa mayelana necala lesibhamu esingekho emthethweni ngathi ke uma ngabe senisuka ke lapho ethembisa seniyamanje ke eEast Rand yilapho ke ngicela sihlangane khona epolice station yase Phosphorus. Akukho ke engangizilungisela kona ngoba akukho engangijiwa ngatshelwa nje ukuthi khona kushoyo kodwa imininingwane yalokho angizange ngiyitshele.
Anything further, Brigadier?
I think I've said what I wanted to say so far, my Lord.
Thank you. Now, you arrived at, and in fact, it was your instruction that that you would want to meet Sergeant Mukhula and accused number 1 and the entire entourage at Phosphorus police station, not so?
It is correct about Phosphorus police station, my Lord, but perhaps let me say yes, the Phosphorus police station, and I'll deal perhaps with the next follow-up, my Lord.
Yebo ngasho ukuthi yebo ukuthi sihlanganeke epolice station Phosphorus yebo abo yilokho ke ekwa esavumelana ngakho noma engakusho.
Thank you, Brigadier. Now you are in the precinct of Phosphorus police station. You are a high-ranking police officer, and you know that by virtue of being such a high-ranking police officer, you yourself were well positioned to receive admissions from the accused and or confessions from the accused, not so?
Yes, in terms of my rank, my Lord, I did know that I'm regarded as Justice of the Peace, and yes, as such, I can take confessions and admissions, my lord. That I knew.
Yebo ngangikwazi-ke lokho ukuthi ngokwesifunda sami-ke ukuthi-ke ngiyangivumela-ke ukuthi uma kuwukuthi-ke uyagonyuluka lokho ngingakuthatha-ke kuyena kanye futhi nama-admissions phecelezi-ke uma ngabe khona akuvumayo ngangazi ukuthi ngesifunda sami ngivumelekile-ke ukuthi ngingakwenza lokho.
Thank you, Brigadier. Now you're armed with that knowledge. You're armed with that knowledge, but despite that knowledge, Brigadier, you decide to go and have this interview with accused number 1 empty-handed.
No, my lord. I think I've really explained this point with greatest respect of this over and over again. That I did not know the contents of what was said by accused number 1 to Sergeant Mkhola. Discussion didn't go that far. Admissions or confessions, for one to make a determination of whether these are admissions or confession, you need to know the details. You need to have knowledge of the information. I did not have that. I did not speak to accused number 1 even telephonically. I didn't know how he looked like and what is his state of mind. How do I make preparation when I didn't know that, my lord? That is why I felt that as part of my investigation, I will go to him and I will start with the paramount prerequisite of the procedure. That is his constitutional rights. Because if he understands these rights and he still elects to speak freely and voluntarily, that direction will then flow from there. If he says, I understand and I don't want to implicate myself, that is the end. So how do I make preparations when I do not know the person I'm going to meet, what will elect? And I don't know, I didn't have the knowledge, my lord.
Lana-ke ngicabanga ukuthi lokhu-ke ngikushilo-ke ngikusho-ke futhi ngenkulu-ke inhlonipho ukuthi-ke kade-ke ngichaza ngikusho-ke lokhu ukuthi-ke okokuqala ngangaze ngihlangane naye umsolo wokuqala ngangamazi-ke nokuthi ubuke kanjani isimo sakhe-ke ngokwasemqondweni ukuthi sikanjani. Manje-ke kwisimo esikanjalo ngiyilungiselela kanjani ukuthi-ke ngiya laphayana ngiphethe lokhu nalokhu nalokhu. Yebo ngitsheliwe ukuthi kukhona-ke akuvumayo noma kushoyo, kodwa imininingwane yalokho ngangayitsheliwe. So ngangazi-ke ukuthi uma ngifika lapho-ke yini azofike ayisho.
And lastly, my lord, that is why it took my engagement with accused number 1 for me to satisfy myself that he was making confessions freely and voluntarily and without any undue influence in sober senses. That only after that did I then activate Colonel Mboto when he said he was willing to make a statement freely and voluntarily to an independent office. With this knowledge now that I just referred to, that is why I was able now to move to the second part of trying to find an officer, because I was equipped with knowledge of what is said to me, what is his state of mind, and his understanding of the rights. I could not make such arrangement prior to that, my lord.
Manje-ke yingakho-ke lokho-ke kwase kungithatha-ke manje sekungidlulisela-ke kwisigaba esilandelayo-ke ngoba manje-ke kukhona-ke engangisengikutsheliwe uyena-ke umsolwa-ke, kodwa ngaphambilini kwalokho akukho engangingakwenza ngoba akunalutho engangikwazi. Yikona-ke lokho manje kuholele ekuthini-ke ngikwazi-ke ukuthi-ke ngithole elinye iphoyisa noma ngithole omunye-ke umuntu ongasiyona ingxenye yophenyo. Lokho-ke kwaholela kuyena uKolonel Mboto.
That's my response, my lord.
Brigadier, you may be excused for having had not known that when you go and talk to accused number 1, there's something that you needed to take along with you. You may be excused for that. But you start the process of talking to accused number 1, you hear what is it that is going to say. You don't say to number 1, "Hey, look, me. Now this is getting very serious. That information, it's serious." You don't go get into the police station, which was just a few steps away from you, and say, "Sbia, wait a minute, in this Red Golf, I'm going to get a formal document where I'm going to document whatever that you are going to say to me." You don't do that, not so.
But my lord, the person says to me in the midst of engaging him, I am prepared to make this confession to an independent police officer. Now I go to the police station to get the form to do what? Because then I'm changing what he just told me. I've said, in terms of the best practice rule, it's advisable that someone independent document this confession. Now, if then I go in subsequent to him alerting me that he's willing to make a confession, a statement rather, to an independent person, free and voluntary, then I take the form and then now he must give me through, and then I'm taking the confession, my lord. It defeats exactly the same principle of getting someone independent, because if I take the form and I document what he's telling me, then I'm taking down the confession, which is what I'm saying. Because of this best practice rule, it is advisable that someone not involved takes the confession. Now I'm being, if the suggestion is that I should have done it, that would have defeated that purpose, because that would have amounted me taking a formal confession from accused number one.
Uqeda ukuthi noma uthi ke mina ukuthi ngimisele ukuthi ke ngigonyulukeke noma ngisenze le statement lesi ke kumuntu ke oyimele noma ke umuntu ongasiyona ke ingxenye yophenyo kulona ke lecala. Manje mina sengiyahamba ngingena e-police station ngithatha iform ngiyabuya ke ngizobhala phansi lokho akushoyo. Lokho ke manje sekuphikisana ke nalokho aqeda ukusho yena kumina ukuthi uyimisela ukuthi lokho akwenze komunye umuntu. Mina sengithatha i-confession noma sengibhala phansi ke i-statement mina ke noma sibhalwa yimina, manje akusenziwa yilo muntu lo athi yena uyimisele ukuthi akwenze kuyena.
That's my response, my lord.
Thank you, Brigadier. I feel a bit compelled again to give you a bit of a discourse, because you really don't understand these things. And I'm saying this with the greatest respect that I have for you and the South African Police Services. You really don't understand these things. This is how it works. There was nothing on that day that barred you from taking down what accused number one told you. You had all the rights, even if you're a constable, Brigadier, for that matter. Even if you're a constable, there was nothing wrong that barred you from taking down everything that accused person said to you in terms of the form that is prescribed by SAPS. However, because of the fact that you are a protagonist of the best practice rule, then you would have said to accused, look, I know that I've taken down this thing, but because I'm involved in the investigation of this case, I am going to request somebody very neutral to come and talk to you. Are you then prepared to repeat what you have told me that I've written down in this form, which you have signed? Are you prepared to do that? Then accused would say, yes, I'm prepared, or I'm not prepared to do that. So that is just a bit of a discourse. That is how it happens. Even if you're a constable, there was nothing wrong that stopped you from taking down that confession.
My lord,
That is not correct. That is not what the law says.
Yeah, you're right. Constable can't take a confession.
I'm not, okay, you can answer.
Now I'm just stating it as law that a constable, who is obviously not a commissioned officer and a justice of the peace,
yes,
he can't take a confession.
No, my lord. A constable is well positioned to take down what this accused person says to him. However, then a constable will go to his branch commander and say, branch commander, I have received this information from a constable, from a suspect, which to me amounts to a confession. But because I am a constable, it won't be admitted at court. So can you then please arrange for a commissioned officer to come and retake down what this person told me?
But you're talking to a colonel with about 30 years, 29 years or 25 years of experience.
The principle is still the same, my lord.
Okay, fine.
As I'm saying,
okay, fine. That's not what the law says. You can continue.
That's a mystery. It's a mystery.
No, you can continue. That's not what the law says. Continue.
so
Brigadier, the law simply says, because you are a commissioned officer, there's nothing that stopped you from taking that confession. However, in order to give credibility to the process, because you were involved with the investigation of the case, you would not have been perceived as a neutral person, hence the intervention of Mboto. That is how the process works.
So, my lord,
That is from 1939.
all right, let's start with the last part. The last part is what I've been saying all along, my lord.
Yes, is that so?
What he's saying is what I've been saying.
Okay.
I think we're aligned with the last part of Advocate Mnisi's position, because I've been saying, me as a colonel, my lord, at that time, because I was an officer, I was allowed in terms of the act to take confessions, but because of the best practice to take the position of neutrality and objectivity, you try to get someone neutral so that whatever that is contained in the statement is tested or seen to be objective.
Okay.
There we are aligned. Where we differ is when he says, when I went to interview the suspect or have a discussion with the suspect in the course of my investigation, I should have went with forms prepared. There we differ. I don't think that is correct. Secondly, when he says it is, I'm not so sure whether I understand Advocate Mnisi correctly to say it is the law prescribed that when you interview a suspect, and that's where you use the constable, that it tells you it's a requirement that before you activate the independent person, you must document what the person or the suspect is telling you before you activate this independent person. If my understanding is correct, then I disagree with him. That's not how it's done. I completely disagree. You interview, and perhaps let me start with a constable. A constable, my lord, even if he or she documents what the accused is telling him, that document is inadmissible. It's not worth the piece of paper that it's not going to be accepted, because you have to be a commissioned officer, and then as a result, you then have the same rights as the magistrate, as being regarded as the justice of the peace. So the constable, it's out when it comes to confessions. But coming back to the issue of whether, when an accused person makes a confession to you, to me in this instance, as a commissioned officer, I'm not aware of the provision that says, before I refer him to Colonel Mboto, I must document what he's telling me in black and white, and then read it to him and ask him if he's prepared to take it to the other side. I'm not aware of that requirement. In fact, there is no such requirement, my lord, if one needs to be frank.
Angiqale kuleyo gcina kashilo u-Advocate Mnisi ukuthi ke lapho ke ilento kade ngisho ke sonke isikhathi ukuthi vele mina ke ngabona ukuthi ke akufanele ukuthi mina kube yimina obhala phansi noma othatha ke le statement kuyena ke umsolwa, ngoba ke kwakufanele kube umuntu owumunye ongasiyona ingxenye yalo uphenyo, futhi ke okunye akushilo ke ukuthi ke lo uma ngabe uyokwenza inhlolo khona nomsolwa kufanele njalo ngaso sonke isikhathi ube namaphepha noma ke ama-documents onawo kuwena ke. Lokho ke angikwazi wabe esenza ke isibonelo ngaye uconstable, lokho ke ukuthi ke uconstable abhale phansi, uma sekubhalile lokho phansi akudluliseleke kuloyo omphethe, lokho ke bengeke kusebenze lelo phepha nje, bekuzofana ukuthi ke nje ayikho kwaleyo nto ebhaliwe ke kulokho ke. Okunye futhi ke lana egcineni ke ukuthi mina ngabe ngibhale phansi lokho engikutshelwa uyena ke umsolwa ngaphambi kokuthi ngikudlulisele kumbotho, bese ngiyamfundela umsolwa ngithi uyavumelana yini nalokhu, ingabe uyimisele yini ukuthi ukuphinde komunye umuntu. Angiyazi nje ukuthi ke ikhona into eshoyo ebhaliwe phansi esho lokho.
Lastly, my lord, on the issue of a constable, why the statement taken by a constable will not stand the first step as it moves from that discussion or that office. As and when you give rights to the accused person, one of the things that you need to say is to indicate your rank, and you must be an officer, because then you will say, I'm a captain, I'm a lieutenant colonel, or whatever officer's rank that you hold. And then you have to explain that this rank is a commissioned officer's rank, and as a result, you are regarded as justice of the peace, and therefore you hold the same right as the magistrate when he makes such confessions to you, and such evidence that can be used against him. How is the constable going to equate to that justice of the peace? Because he is not an officer, or he or she is not an officer. So that will not suffice, my lord. That the issue of the constable taking a confession really will, I don't see how you can make it right, because how do you pass this part of the justice of the peace?
Kuloku akushilo futhi ke advocate Mnisi mala nesikhundla noma irank ye constable ngoba ke uma ngabe uzethula wena ke na ke umuntu ohlangana naye noma ukhulumisana naye kufanele usho ke irank yakho ke uyi constable uyi captain uyi lieutenant colonel ke la khona ke lawo ma rank lawo ke ila akunikeza ke imvume ke noma negunya ke lokuthi ukwazi ke ukuthi uthathe istatement ezithizeni noma ke ama confessions usho ke ukuthi ke lokho ke kukunikeza ke ukuthi ke ulinganeke nayo ke imanje noma ke umagistrate manje ke uma uyi constable ke ikubeka kuphi ke kulawo ma ranks lawo ukuthi wena ke usungathatha I confession noma ke la umuntu agonyuluka khona.
That's my response, my lord.
Brigadier, let me wrap up my discourse. This is just the discourse. Section 317 is very specific. It says a statement that is 217, not 317. I'm talking about to the confession things. 217, it says that statement will then become admissible at court if it is repeated in the presence of a commissioned officer, if it has been taken down by a constable, if it has not been repeated down in the presence, or if it has not been repeated in the presence of a commissioned officer, it will remain a statement of a constable. But there is nothing in the Act that says a constable can't take that statement. There is nothing in the law that says you, as an investigating officer, for instance, in this case, you should not have taken down a statement from him.
No, we agree insofar as me being a commission officer, my lord, as I said, that nothing barred me from taking the confession. But before you get to that point, my lord, the constitutional rights of the accused are paramount. And one, that's why I said you can't separate these two. You can't go to for example, accused number one and say, give me a confession. That's not how it works, because then you are violating the accused's constitutional rights. You start this side first on the issues of the constitutional rights and his understanding of these rights and what he elects to do. In that process, you need to look at his level of sobriety and his understanding of what is going on. Upon that part being cleared, then that is when you will move to the part of the confession. And that is where now the best practice rule I said, my lord, I took at that stage to say it will not be advisable for me to take the confession, because now I'm sitting with an individual which I'm convinced he has made a confession, he understands his right, he is willing to make such to an independent officer who is not involved in this matter. I took the position, my lord, of the best practice rule to say, let me get someone independent to document this for the sake of objectivity and fairness on both sides. Because even for him, my lord, he can then be comfortable to say whatever he needs to say to this person without any fear of reprisal, because I will not be there, my members will not be there. And that is why also, earlier, my lord, I said, I asked the members to move away after they introduced to me, because I wanted to create this environment of accountability for the accused. And that really what formed me up to the time Colonel Mbote took the confession, came on board and took the confession from the accused.
Ngangeke ngikwenze lana ukuthi ke ngifike ke na ke umsolo bese ngithi ke kuyena ke nikezeke confession noma gonyuluka ke engikwenzayo ukuthi ke ngifike kuyena ke ngimchazeleke ukuthi ke amalungelo akhe ngokomgaqo sisekelo ukuthi ke athini ke ngibe nesiqinisekiso futhi sokuthi ke uyawezwa ke noma ukuthi ke kucacileke lokho kuyena ke akukho angakuzwa kukona, bese ke ukusukela lapho ke manje ila esesindlulela khona kwisigaba sesibili ke la esekhuluma khona noma esegonyuluka khona ke ila khona ke sesindlulela ke manje ku Colonel Mboto noma ila khona ngishilo ke ukuthi yebo mina ngangakwazi-ke ukwenza, ngangingakwazi ukuthi ngikwenze lokho, kodwa ke ngathatha isinqumo sokuthi cha akube elinye iphoyisa elingasiyona ingxenye yalo uphenyo. Yingakho nasekuqaleni ngathi emuva kokuthi ke amaphoyisa la engawafica enaye bese bengethululeke kuyena ke ngabacela ukuthi ke ake nje basishiyeke khona lapho ukwenzela ke ukuthi naye ke abe nokukhululeka abanako.
That's my response, my lord.
Brigadier, why did you avoid to have this interview with accused number 1 in the building of the police station?
No, my lord, it's not a question of avoidance. As I've said, and I need to go back because that's what I've said previously, even when Mr. Mngomezulu was still on board, I've said the members, my lord, meaning Sergeant Bola, that team, they were en route to Phosphorus on investigation of the matter they were pursuing on accused number 1. That was the direction they were on to. That is why I asked them to meet me at Phosphorus police station, because it was on their route. Now, when I met them, my lord, the knowledge I had is that he was making some form of admission, not the contents, and I needed to hear whether he is going to, whether he understands his rights, and what is it that he needs to tell me, insofar as this matter, freely and voluntarily, if such is being made. I had no knowledge, my lord, so it wasn't a question of saying I'm avoiding the offices of Phosphorus. If I was fully equipped with knowledge, my lord, I would have called him straight to Ayrton, straight directly where we went to. I would have said he must come to Ayrton, and then I start making arrangements from Ayrton. I drove to Phosphorus because I did not know what accused number 1 will tell me after I make him aware of his rights and what he would elect to do. It was only when I was satisfied that he understands his right and he wants to make a confession that I then said, let's redirect the whole route and drive to Ayrton while I try to find an officer. So I could not have made an arrangement without knowledge, my lord.
Kwakungasibona-ke ukuthi-ke cha angifuni ukuthi ngisebenzise ama-ofisi ase-police station laphayana. Ngishilo-ke ukuthi uma ngabe ngishayelwa-ke ucingo ngitshelwa-ke ngalokhu ukuthi babe sendleleni eya khona-ke ePhosphorus kuyingxenye yophenyo, ingakho-ke ngathi asihlanganeni khona-ke ePhosphorus ngizokhuluma naye ngimtshela amalungelo akhe. Uma ngithola-ke ukuthi ngempela-ke amalungelo engimchazela wona uyawezwa, futhi-ke ayikho nje inkinga anayo-ke ngalokho, bese-ke siyaqhubeka-ke. Ngangingazi ukuthi wayezongiphendula athini-ke emuva kwalokhu engangikutsheliwe mina ukuthi-ke uyakusho kubona. Uma kuwukuthi-ke nganginemininingwane ephelele, ngangeke ngithi asiye nokuya ePhosphorus, ngangizothi-ke akalethwe noma-ke akasiwe khona-ke e-Ayrton, bese ngiyaqala-ke lapho manje-ke ngifuna umuntu owayezosiza ngaso leso statement leso.
That's my response, my lord.
Thank you, Brigadier. It's very simple. The reason why you avoided to take accused just a few steps and get into the door of the offices of the police station is because you wanted to keep him in isolation. In other words, you wanted to keep him exclusively under your mercy.
No, but what makes, my lord, I disagree. Accused number 1 was arrested in Tembisa. I was not there, so I'm not sure what Mace is being referred to. When I got a report that is making some form of admissions, I was not with him. It was not directly. If the control is referring to the police, then I can agree because I'm part of the police service. But if the control refers to me directly, that is incorrect because I met him in Phosphorus. We had this discussion. After this discussion, my lord, when I said we must change direction, I informed the members that they must move now to Ayrton. He didn't drive with me in my car. The members drove with him in the same official vehicle to Ayrton, and that is why I made my arrangement with Mr. Monaring, Constable Monaring, to avail himself, after I found Colonel Mboto, to transport him to Colonel Mboto for a confession. So even at Ayrton, when he had arrived, after the arrangements were made, he was handed over to Constable Monaring. That's not my control. If the extension is to say because we are police officers by extension, then there I agree. But there was no fear of that I want him to be on me. I don't understand why would I do that, my lord. But there were exchange of members in the hands of accused number 1 leading up to Colonel Mboto, because even Constable Monaring handed him over to Colonel Mboto and then Colonel Mboto documented the confession and handed him back. So it wasn't my full control, and that is if the control is referring to me directly.
Uma kuukuthi ke uma ngangimfunyela nje kumina ke ukuthi abe ngaphansi kwami ke angeke ngivumelane ke nalokho, kodwa uma ukusho lokho ke uhlanganisa ke ukuthi amaphoyisa ngoba vele ke ngilona ke noma ngingxenye ke yayo South African Police Service, lokho ngizovumelana ke nakho. Noma sekuhanjwa ke sekuyiwa manje eEratin akahambanga noma akagibelanga ke kule imoto eshayelwa yimina, wahamba ngaleyo moto leyo ayefike ngayo ekuyimoto yamaphoyisa. Mase kufika ke khona ke eEratin wase endlulisela kuyena Constable Munareng, ekuyena owamthatha ke wamusa kuyena ke uKolonel Mboto. Emuva kwalokho uKolonel Mboto wabesembuyisela ke. Uma kuukuthi ke uthi ke ngaphansi kwami ngoba singamaphoyisa lokho ngizovumelana ke, kodwa uma uthi ngangimfuna nje ukuthi abe kumina ke ngicha lokho angeke ngivumeke lapho.
Now, when I say you, Brigadier, I am referring to yourself and your team. You were working in tandem. In other words, you were working as a team. What they were doing there, it was an extension of yourself, and what we were doing, it was an extension of your other team members. So understand me to say you to mean your team, that is the entire team that was involved in his arrest. Do you understand?
I understand what is being put to me, but I'm not sure if I agree with that. My understanding, my lord, is that what the members were doing, it was in the course of investigation, which was justified in terms of the law. That's my understanding. Colonel Mboto was not part of the team who then received accused number 1 at the end to dispose this confession that we're talking about. So on those bases, I cannot agree, my lord.
Uma ubeka ngaleyo ndlela ke usho ukuthi sihlanganisa mina ke namaphoyisa ke angeke ngikuvumele lokho ngoba ke lamaphoyisa lana ayeqhubeka noma ayenza uphenyo lwawo base ukuthi uma sendlulisela kuyena ke uKolonel Mboto wayengayona ke ingxenye yalethimba leli ke elaliphenye, yena ke kwakuwukuthi nje athathe ke istatement lesi sokugunyuka sasenzwa uyena umsolwa. Ngaleyo ndlela ke lapho angeke ngivumelane nabo.
But further to this, my lord, I forgot this important part. The SWAT team, the Constable Munareng that I phoned, they were there to provide security support to the investigation team. They were not part of the investigation team in terms of investigating. Their role really was to give support to the investigation and escort, of course, when accused person will be moved from point A to point B.
Okunye ke futhi ngicabanga ukuthi ke kusemqoka ke ngakushilo ukuthi ke amaphoyisa lana ke ebizwa ngokuthi ke iSWAT wona ke babengasiyona ingxenye yophenyo, kodwa ke ekwaboke lapha phecelezi lokubizwa ukuthi escort ukuphelekezela ke nokuthi futhi ke banikezeleke ngokuvikeleka ke kuthimba leli eliphenyayo uma ngabe umsola esuswa endaweni ethize esendluliselwa kwenye.
That's my response, my lord.
Brigadier, I wonder if you just heard yourself what you said. You're saying the SWAT members were there only to provide security and escort and not to be part of the investigation. Is that what you're saying?
My lord, yes. I'm saying the SWAT team is an elite unit. It's a tactical unit that through the memorandum of understanding, and I think I obtained a statement to that effect, that they were providing security because of the skills, the level of training they have, to the investigation team as and when they were doing escort. But yes, you in the midst of the escort, like for example, I've utilized Constable Munareng to transport accused number 1 from Ereton to Colonel Mboto precisely because they had the necessary skills to deal with violent situation should we be confronted with such. So the SWAT became involved with the investigation team because of their elite training in escort and providing security during the course of investigation.
Yebo ilokho engikushoyo ke ukuthi ke ngenxa ke yoqeqesho abalithola ke laba beswati ke ukuthi ke bona ke benza lokho phecelezi ke kubizwa ngokuthi ke escort uphelekezela amaphoyisa noma ke ithimba eliphenyayo nokunikeza futhi ke ngokuvikeleka ke kulabo ekuyibona abaphenya icala ke, kodwa ke base nanjengoba ngishilo ke lana ukuthi yena ke uMunareng wase esiza ke nomelekelela ukuthi athathe umsolwa amhambise amse kuyena ke uKennel Mbotho. Lokho ngikwenza ke ngenxa yokuthi ke bona ke baqeqeshiwe ke kwizimo ezithize uma kungenzeka ke ukuthi lezo zimo lezo sibe nokuhlangana nazo.
Not to say, my lord, because I don't want to be misunderstood, to say now I'm saying they were prohibited to do any police duties that came their way. And that is why I made an example of Constable Munareng, where I asked him to take accused number 1 to Kennel Mbotho for the purpose of a confession.
Hayi ukuthi ke ngoba ngifuna ukuthi ke ngingazwakali ke ngendlela ekuyiyona, hayi ukuthi ke babe ngatshelwa ke noma ke bevinjwa ke ukuthi ke benzeke umsebenzi ke ohlangeneke nophoyisa ke uma kuukuthi ke isidingo sikhona sokuthi kwenzeke lokho. Ngakho ke uMnare ngathi ngimcela ke ukuthi ke ahambise yena ke umsolwa ukuthi ayohlangana naye uKennel Mbotho.
That's my response, my lord.
So it is therefore wrong for you to say that they were not part of the investigation.
No, it's not wrong, my lord. I think, please, I think maybe Advocate Mnisi, let me explain it. So the SWAT, it's a uniform team. They wear uniform. We are detectives. We don't wear uniform in the course of our daily duties, my lord. SWAT is an elite unit trained to deal with volatile situations. That is their skills. They came on board to support the team, not only in this matter, even in various matters, my lord, insofar as the escort and protection, be it of investigators and the people that we are dealing with, because of their skills. But during the course of investigation, if they needed to do certain things, because in terms of the Police Act, they are police officers, they will be utilized, my lord. But their main function was not to take. That's why if you can look at all these volumes that are before court, it's more than 10 volumes, my lord. You'll never find a single statement taken by the member of the SWAT team, because they were not investigators. They were there to provide support. That was the role really that they came in to do.
Engikushoyo ke lana ukuthi ke yebo lama members ke eSWAT ngoba ke bona ke bathole uqeqeshwa ke ngendlela ke ethize ke bona ke okwabo ukuthi ke baphelekezele noma phecelezi ke escorta nokuthi banikezeke ukuvikeleka kwithimba leli eliphenyayo. Kodwa ke ngokomthetho ke wamaphoyisa noma ke iPolice Act yebo bona bayibona ke amaphoyisa futhi kunye ke bona ke bagqoka ke umfathwana ke wasesiphoyiseni noma ke iuniform yasesiphoyiseni thina ke nanjengama detectives iuniform asiyifaki. Kodwa ke lokho akusho ukuthi uma ngabe khona ke lapho kudingeka ukuthi balekele noma basize khona ke abangeke basizwe nanjengoba kwenzeka ke lana kuyena uMunareng. Kodwa ke uma ungabheka ke onke ke lama file alana ke phambi kwenkantolo adlululeke kwishumi noma ke ku10 akukho la uzothola khona ke istatement esenziwe ibona noma ke umunye wamaswati ngoba ke abasiyona ingxenye yethimba eliphenyayo.
That's my response, my lord.
It is therefore, Brigadier, misleading of you to say, therefore, on the basis of that explanation, to say that they were not part of the investigating team.
No, it's not. No, it's not misleading, my lord. My understanding, and unless my understanding and that of Advocate Mnisi is not the same, we dealt with the mandate that was given by the National Commissioner when the investigation team was appointed. I went through the names on the previous occasions with Advocate Mnisi to say it was myself and the other 3 members. We went through them by names. And I said, in addition to that, the members of the cold case team, that is Sergeant Mokolo and Mokhane, formed part of that. But there was also a support from crime intelligence, and the instrumental part there was the late Sergeant Mabena as a support. But the investigation team, as per the appointment, we dealt with it. So I can't now come and say, because then what it means then the National Commission appointed the SWAT to be part of this investigation. That's not my understanding of the investigation team. They did form part of the investigation insofar as the tactical skills that they came with, as much as Sergeant Mabena came on the intelligence side. He was assisting in intelligence, not necessarily the investigation. The detectives were the ones, my lord, that were zooming into the investigation. And that is why, sorry my lord to be explaining this because I wanted to be clear, that is why at the beginning, when I was talking to Advocate, or rather under cross-examination by Advocate Mnisi, I have said all 4 of us members who were appointed to deal with this case at the time, before there was a separation, copies were made to each and every member of the investigation to go and analyze the docket and come up with a way forward as to what really transpired. That was right at the beginning. Those copies were given to the investigators that were appointed. None of such copies were given to SWAT, my lord, because they were not part of the investigation. So I'm answering it in that context.
Ukuphendula ke lokho ukuthi ke bengakhulumi ke iqiniso ke uma ngithi ke iSWAT engayona ingxenye yethimba eliphenyayo akusibona ke ukuthi bengakhuluma iqiniso. iSWAT ke bona ke babelekelela nje bangishilo ke ngoba bengishilo kwaseqaleni uma ngakikhuluma lokho naye ke uadvocate Mnisi ukuthi sengibabala ke abantu ucommissioner ekuyibona ababiza ke ukuthi ababe ibona abaphenya lecala kwakuyimina kanye nabanye ke abathathu ngibashilo ke ngibashilo ngamagama eqaleni ukuthi sanikezwa ke umuntu ngamunye ukuthi si4 wanikezwa ke idocket noma ke icopy ukuthi ahambe ayofunda abhekeke ukuthi yini ke singenza kanjani ke ukuthi siye phambili ke nalo lecala leli lawo makhophi lawo akaze anikezwe ke kulaba beSWAT.
That's my response, my lord.
Thank you, Brigadier. Back to the reason why you avoided to take accused number 1 into the police offices. The second reason was you would not have been able, when I say you, I mean you and your team, in that understanding. The assault that has been happening to him, as per his testimony in evidence, in his evidence in chief in the trial, within the trial, that would have been hampered by the presence of the police who would have been there at the police station. In other words, you would not have been able to perpetuate that assault that was happening to him in the presence of the police at that police station. That's why you avoided to take him into the offices of First Lawrence Police Station.
So, my lord, the first discourse I disagree, as I've given the reason, and I strongly disagree with the second one as well, of the assault. And my recollection, my lord, of what was put to me by the late Mr. Mgomezulu, there was no assertion that said, and that was the time when we were dealing with the trial within trial, that accused number 1 was assaulted in my presence. It's a new now submission that I'm hearing. I was not told, because I remember there was a time where I wanted to know specifically from the late Mr. Mgomezulu whether is the assertion saying I was part of the assault or accused number 1 was assaulted in my presence. The answer was no. Now, if I'm being told that I avoided going to the office because he's going to be assaulted in my presence, that's something new, my lord. It is not true, but that's not what was put, unless now that version is changing now, my lord. And I don't know now, it is not correct, my lord. But it's a two contradicting version. I was not told that I was present when accused number 1 was assaulted previously.
Kuloko kwesibili ke ukuthi ke isizathu noma imbangela ke yokuthi ke singangeni noma singayike kumahhovisi ngoba ke lokho ke manje kwakuzovimba ke ukuthi ke ukushaywa lokhu bekade ekhuluma ngakho sonke isikhathi umsolo wakhe wangeke kwenzekeke lapha ngoba kwakuzoba namanye amaphoyisa ke manje kuloko kumina ke sekuba indida ke noma ke okubili manje okwahlukeleke ngoba ke ngisakhumbula ke esekhona ke yena ke uMr Mgomezulu ngoba ngabuza ke ukuthi ke uma ekhuluma ngokushaywa umsolo futhi washaywa mina noma ke washaywa ngikhona wasephendula ke kulokho ke wathi cha akaze ashaywe ngikhona ke kodwa uma manje sekushintsha ke lokho kuthi ke mina ke ngangingafuni ungena emahhovisi ngoba ngangivimba ngoma lokho kwakuzokwenza ukuthi ke angasohluleka ukuthi ashaywe sekuyindida ke kumina lokho ngoba into ezimbili ezahlukene lezo.
My lord, I recall that in my response I even said I agree that I was not there when he was arrested, and obviously there's very little that I can say. However, what I can say is that when he was with me, he did not say to me he was assaulted, and I did not see any visible injuries. But I took it further to say, in having a difficulty to understand it, is that even later when he was detained, when I had an opportunity now to collect the occurrence books, which we dealt with in this court, I could not find a single entry which indicated that at a certain stage, when he was booked in Valeria now for detention, he was booked with injuries or whether when he was visited hourly, it is a requirement that he once reported this alleged assault that took place in Tembisa, because that's what was put to me. And I seem to be hearing now that I was avoiding the assault that was taking place now in my presence, unless I'm misunderstanding. But if that is the case, my lord, then that's why I'm saying I'm having a difficulty now of reconciling these two versions, my lord.
Nkathi ke eboshwa umsola ngangekho ke manje ke kuncane ke engakusho ngalokho, kodwa ke ngesikhathi enganginaye hlezi naye ngixoxe ngikhulumisana naye ke akukho ke akusho ke kumina ke ukuthi ke washaywa, angizange ngibone ke ukuthi khona ukulimala okwakubonakala ke nangalesikhathi ke manje esehamba ke eya khona ke noma ke ema police station noma eValeria se nanjengoba umuntu njalo ngehora kufanele ke ayobhekwa ke nami sengiya khona ke ngiyothatha incwadi noma ke ama occurrence book la ase police station. Akukho nokodwa engakubona la ekubhalwe khona ke ukuthi ke wabika noma ke wabatshela ke ukuthi washaywa. Manje lokhu ke lokhu okwashiwo qala nalokho kushiwayo sekuyinto embili ke manje ezahlukene.
Lastly, my lord, also when I received, I think in a day or two, the confession document from Colonel Mboto, there was no entry where a question was put to accused number one, whether he was assaulted and by who and under what circumstances did he say he was assaulted. So that is how I dealt with it insofar as the previous occasion, but as I said, it was in relation to what was put to me. And my position stands with what I've put on record, my lord. But if the assertion is that now I was involved, that is absolutely not correct, my lord.
Okunye okugcina ke futhi uma sengithola ke istatement ke noma lesi sogunyulo ke esasibhalwe uyena uKolonel Mboto kumbuzo ke owahlonywa kuyena ke umsolo ke la abuzwa khona uyena uKolonel Mboto ukuthi washaywa yini, uma kuukuthi washaywa ubani, ngaphansi kwaziphi izimo ke la aphendule khona ke asho ukuthi ke washaywa. Akukho la engakubona khona noma engakuthola khona lokho ilokho ke ngakusho ngaleso sikhathi, kodwa manje uma sekushintshwa ke kubekwa ngalendlela ke ngisamileke lokho ukuthi ngoba ke akushiwo ngaphambi ukuthi ngangikhona noma washaywa ngikhona.
That's my response, my lord.
Thank you, Brigadier. Don't rush and speak about Mboto. We're still coming to Mboto. We're still at Fort Loras police station. We're still coming to Mboto.